So it just happened. Snapchat laid off 20% of its employees. Companies doing layoffs is happening more frequently these days, and with inflation being at an all-time high, it just doesn't seem to be slowing down. Even large companies like Google, although they're not necessarily doing layoffs, are going through a hiring freeze. What used to be a booming industry, especially in tech when hiring was nonstop, it's scary to see that there aren't as many opportunities as there was even a couple months ago. I don't necessarily want to scare you, but that is the reality at the moment. And what I want to share about this video is that as developers, how do we figure out and best navigate during these turbulent times? But before we do, I want to share an article from The Verge of exactly what happened that led to a 20% reduction in employees. Then I'll share my thoughts. So the title of the article is Snap is canceling several projects and laying off 20% of employees. Snapchat's original shows, in-app games, and camera drones are no more. Maybe it's just me, but I did not even realize that Snapchat had any original shows, in-app games, and camera drones. I just thought they were a photo sharing or video sharing app that you do amongst friends. But regardless of how I feel about Snap, let's just keep reading. Snap is laying off around 20% of its more than 6,400 employees and canceling its original shows, in-app games, and several other projects as part of a corporate restructuring. In a company memo on Wednesday that you can read in full below, CEO Evan Spiegel wrote that Snap is restructuring our business to increase focus on our three strategic priorities: community growth, revenue growth, and augmented reality. Interesting, augmented reality. Spiegel said that the company's revenue growth had re-accelerated to 8% from being flat in late July, suggesting its ad business is starting to rebound. Still, that is a far cry from the more than 40% revenue growth Snap was seeing before Russia invaded Ukraine, which it blamed for a slowdown in marketing spend, and a broader contraction in the digital ads market that started earlier this year. In a filing with the SEC, Snap said it expects the layoffs, which were first reported by The Verge on Tuesday, to save it $500 million in cost annually. So essentially, they're blaming their revenue growth based on what's happening in Ukraine. In some regards, yes, the 40% growth is great, but at the same time, were they thinking that this was going to be sustainable long term? Who knows? Anyways, let's keep going. Unfortunately, given our current lower rate of revenue growth, I guess they didn't expect that, it has become clear that we must reduce our cost structure to avoid incurring significant ongoing losses, Spiegel wrote in the memo. So when you had that 40% growth, were you massively hiring, expecting it to grow even further to 50, to 60, to 70? And all of a sudden, is this bad mismanagement? I don't know. While we have built substantial capital reserves, so they basically have a lot of money, and have made extensive efforts to avoid reductions in the size of our team by reducing spend in other areas, we must now face the consequence of our lower revenue growth and adapt to the market environment. This is a very typical leadership did poorly, but now the employees are the ones that are going to have to suffer, it sounds like. Spiegel said that Snap would end its original shows that appear in the Discover section of Snapchat, along with its in-app games and HTML miniature applications built by outside developers. Personally, I've never used any of those things, let alone use Snapchat, but the fact that they're trying to come up with other avenues to generate more revenue is good, but you have to get the core business figured out first before you start expanding. The company's self-flying camera drone, Pixie, is being canned after debuting in only April. So what is that? April, May, June, July, August, September. So about less than 6 months. Pretty insane. Spiegel said the company is also winding down Zenly, a separate app for seeing where your friends are on the map that was acquired in 2017, and Voisey, a TikTok-like music app that Snap brought in 2020. So a lot of different stuff that was happening behind the scenes of trying to grow at all costs and trying to find other ways to come up with different revenues, but some can argue that this was a big waste of money. Since at least 2017, Snap has invested in original vertically shot shows for its Discover sections. Just earlier this year, the company announced a slate of new shows featuring celebrities like Olympic gymnast Simone Biles and the social media star Charli D'Amelio. Did I pronounce that right? In its latest earnings report, Snap bragged that 10 million Snapchat users had watched The Fight Inside, a new Snap show featuring the professional boxer Ryan Garcia. The company's platform for mini apps and games from outside developers debuted in 2020 as a way for users to do things like book concert tickets with friends without leaving Snapchat, but the platform has remained relatively buried inside Snapchat and hasn't contributed meaningful to Snap's ad business. Not that great. Maybe it was something that was a greenfield project that really needed a strategy for revenue growth, but they probably didn't have the bandwidth or resources to really do that. Snap's leadership team is also being shaken up this week. Spiegel announced that Jerry Hunter, the company's engineering chief, will become chief operating officer, overseeing all monetization, growth, partnerships, and engineering. That's pretty interesting to convert a CTO into a chief, COO, because they're typically pretty different roles, but hey, to each their own, right? Snap's chief business officer and top ads exec Jeremiah Gorman announced Tuesday that she was leaving to run Netflix's forthcoming ad-supported tier. So maybe the reason why that's being converted is because this individual is leaving. And if you want to read the full segment, you could read it here, but essentially it sounds like a lot of restructuring and reorganization is going to be happening. And now I get to share my thoughts as a developer. As a developer, I believe that you really don't have any control outside of what's happening at a company. If you're an employee, then you can only do what you can control. And what Snap has done in terms of expanding and trying out different things is actually very exciting from a developer's perspective. But as a developer, we also don't think about the revenue, the growth, the financials, unless we have our own little side hustle or our own business. What we care about is the technology. And unfortunately, if you're part of a team that was involved in some of these initiatives that are getting sunset, you're highly likely to also get let go, which kind of sucks, right? Because you are doing the work that you were given, and now you're going through some layoffs and maybe given a severance package if you're lucky. As a developer, what can you do to kind of keep yourself a little bit more bulletproof during these really rough times? First, I would encourage everyone to just not get comfortable at any one company. You just never know when you will go through certain situations like this. Even if you are a skilled developer or a developer that's just kind of starting off, or someone that's getting a little bit complacent at your current position, never get complacent at your current role, because you just never know in a snap of a finger that you could be told that, hey, we're going through layoffs, this is the situation, it is what it is, and you're gonna have to keep looking. And unfortunately, even experienced developers have a hard time going through interviews because interviews are somewhat broken. And maybe I'll save that for another video, but it is a lot easier to interview at a company when you have leverage. And what I mean by that is, if you're working at a company, the worst case scenario is that if you don't get this job, you still work at a company that is giving you money so you can pay your bills, eat food, have a roof over your head, all of those necessary essentials, right? The second thing I would say is, don't get really too committed to a single company. I always talk about the fallacy of that company is your family. That is so far from the truth. A relationship between you and the company can be cordial, can be respectful, but at the end of the day, it's a business transaction. So treat your career like your own business and make sure you're learning the necessary skills to keep advancing your career. Make more money by learning better technologies, getting better at architecture, getting better at overall software development. And even if you are falling into the category of going through these layoffs, you won't be worried about these kinds of situations because you know you have the skill sets to do other jobs. And as a developer, there's just so many opportunities out there, whether you want to work in the health industry, the ed tech, FANG companies or manga companies, whatever you want to decide. As long as you know that you have the skill sets of knowing how to code, build good, really software, then even if you go through layoffs like this, it shouldn't be too much of a hurdle to get back into a different company. Obviously, layoffs are never good, and going through a situation like this is tough. But I encourage even new developers that get their first role to, yes, really relish the fact that you did get this job and finally made this life-changing moment for you. But at the same time, don't settle, because things like this happens on such a consistent basis that you just never know. No one is bulletproof from the economy. No one is bulletproof from sometimes bad management. And as developers, you just gotta be aware of those types of scenarios. So again, I encourage all developers to really just always keep your skills up to date. Make sure to understand what your company really does and if they're using their money wisely. Either way, I hope that this news wasn't too depressing and more informational about what you should do as a developer if you're in a situation like this. Snap is just one company. There are a lot of companies out there that are hiring still, so don't be too worried about the current situation, especially as developers. We do have a lot of hard technical skills that a lot of companies will die for, so definitely keep your skills up and everything should be okay. With that being said, keep building developers. Your time will come. Bye.